Good morning, grade 7. I hope you all are fine. So, today we are going to start our next topic, that is classifying plants. I'm your teacher Aruj Tarek, and our course is Cambridge Checkpoint Science 7. So, today our topic for lecture of biology is classifying plants. Okay, you know what is plant? What is the meaning of classification? Classification means to divide, okay, to put into different categories. This is called classification. When you put something, for example, I give you, I give you different colors. Okay, I tell you that classify these colors. What you will do? What's the most basic thing about classifying colors? You will divide the colors on the basis of their color. Simple. I've given you a lot of colors. You will keep all the red colors on one side, all the orange colors on one side. So what you are doing, you are dividing the colors on the basis of their colors. Simple. So this is classifying, to divide or to put into different categories. So we will start with classification. So living things, all the living things are classified into groups. Okay, Carl Linnaeus, he was a scientist and he was the first person to classify living things. What he did, he grouped the organism into species. Okay, if you have seen my lecture about what is a species, you may know that I have told you in that lecture that Carl Linnaeus classified the living things and he also introduced the binomial system of naming, binomial naming system or binomial nomenclature, according to which we give organisms two names. First name is of genus and second name is of species. If you have already have seen that lecture, you may know that what I'm talking about. So Carl Linnaeus, he was a Swedish scientist and he was the first person who classified the living organisms. Okay, we can classify organisms into he classified organisms into species, but we can classify living organisms into much larger group. Okay, for example, we can classify the organisms which have green leaves and can photosynthesize or can do photosynthesis are called plants, right? If we see a living thing which has green leaves and it can do photosynthesis, we call it a plant, right? If you see any plant, you instantly know that yes, this is a plant. Okay. And organisms that can move around and eat other organisms are animals, right? Okay. If you see a tiger, you just quickly know, yes, this is an animal. Humans, what organisms that can move around? Humans can move around. And we eat each other. For example, we eat animals, right? So we are also included in the category of animals. Okay, so what is classification? Living things are classified into groups, right? Carl Linnaeus classified organisms into species, but we can classify organisms into much larger group. Number one is plants. We can classify the organisms which have green leaves and can photosynthesize into plants. Next, organisms that can move around and eat each other are called animals, right? If I tell you that there is a kangaroo, you will tell me, Miss, this is an animal. If I show you a plant, you will tell me, Miss, this is a plant. So these are the bigger categories in which we divide the living things. And plant group and animal group are called kingdom. So there are two kingdoms. Number one is plant and number two is animal. This is for living things. Okay, now we'll proceed toward classification of plants. Okay, there are two kingdoms. Number one plant, number two animals. First of all, we will study about plants and then I will give you a lecture about animals. But in this, we will study about classification of plants. Okay, plant kingdom contain several million different species of plants. Okay, plant kingdom have millions of the species of plants, right? You agree there are millions of plants on this earth. Okay, these are classified, all the plants are classified into four groups: mosses, ferns, conifers and flowering plants. So if I show you any plant, okay, if it will belong to any of these four species. For example, it may belong to the flowering plant, or it may be a fern, or it may be a moss. Okay, so it will belong to any of this category. So there are all the plants on this earth are classified into these four groups. So first of all, we will study about number one, mosses. Okay, so mosses are very small plants, very small. I will show you a picture and you will know that how small they are. Okay, most of them live in damp, shady places. Damp means which has some moisture, which has some humidity, or you can say which has some amount of water. They live in damp, shady places. Okay, when you wash your clothes, okay, and you just spin your clothes, okay, you don't dry your clothes, you just spin your clothes. When you take out your clothes, they are just a little wet, right? You call it, these cloths are damp because they are just little wet, they have little moisture, little water in them. Okay, so an environment in which the air has little water, little moisture in it, we call it damp. So mosses live in damp, shady places. Shady means which has shade on them, which don't get the direct sunlight. We call it a shady place. Most of them live in damp, shady places. They don't produce flowers. Okay, they don't have any flowers. They produce spores for reproduction. Reproduction means simply to produce babies. Okay, this is reproduction, just in the most simple words. So they produce spores. Spores, I will show you the spores. Okay, I'm going to show you the spores. Just remember, they produce spores for reproduction. Next, they have thin leaves that dry out easily. Okay, I will revise this slide. We have 5 points about mosses. They are small plants, they live in damp, shady places, they don't produce flowers, they produce spores for reproduction, and they have thin leaves that dry out easily. Now I'm going to show you how a moss looks like. You may have seen a moss 1,000 times, but you never noticed it. Mosses. See in this picture, You may have seen that if you have ever went to a lake or river, you may have seen that the water is flowing and there is some stones which have green thing on it. Okay, you may have thought that this is fungus or something, but this is a plant. It is called mosses. Okay, next, now we will study about the structure of a moss. Okay, this is a capsule, and inside this capsule there are spores. Spores are like this, small circles. Okay, they produce spores. Capsule has spores which are used for reproduction to produce new plants. This is the stalk. Okay, this is the stem like structure. Okay, it does not have any proper stem, because here you can see the size of this plant. This area may have thousands of plants or hundreds of plants. So it does not have a proper stem. It just have a stem like structure. And these leaves, these are very thin. These are leaf like structure. They are not proper leaves. So this is a very simple structure of moss. It has stem like structure, it has leaf like structure, it has a capsule which has spores which will be later used to produce new plants, and it has a stalk which holds the capsule. Simple. This is all about mosses. Now we will proceed toward the second group of plants, which is ferns. Okay, ferns grow in shady places. Okay, shady means which have shadow on them. Okay, so ferns grow in shady places. If there is a place and there is direct sunlight, the ferns will not go there. Okay, they need shady places to grow. Next, ferns are bigger than mosses. Yes, they are just little bigger than mosses. Some of the ferns grow so big that they are called fern trees. Okay, some ferns are just a little bigger than mosses, and some of the ferns can grow into trees. These are called fern trees. Okay, leaves of the ferns are called fronds. Okay, what are they called? Fronds. And they also don't produce flowers. Mosses don't produce flowers, ferns don't produce flowers. And mosses reproduce using spores, and ferns, they also reproduce using spores, and these spores are present on the back of fronds, back of their leaves. Okay, we will revise this. Ferns grow in shady places. Some ferns are bigger than mosses, but some ferns grow so big that these are called fern trees. Leaves of the ferns are called fronds. They don't produce flowers just like mosses. They reproduce using spores just like mosses. But in the case of mosses, the spores are present inside a capsule. But in ferns, these spores are present on the back of fronds. And what is a frond? The leaves of fern. So the spores are present on the back of their leaves. I will show you the picture. Okay, this is a fern. Okay. Okay, this is a fern. Okay, this is a frond. This is a frond. It is a leaf. So this is a frond. And behind this frond, there are spores on the back of frond. You can see these are the spores on the back of frond. Here I will show you a real picture. Okay, see, this is a plant of fern. Not a plant of fern, this is a fern. Okay, when I say fern, you know that this is a plant. So this hole, this is a, okay, this hole is a frond. Not just this one part is a frond, this hole is a frond. So this hole, this is a frond, and you can see at the back of frond there are spores, right? You can see these spores. So there are spores at the back of the frond, and these spores are used for reproduction. Reproduction means these spores will produce new plants. Okay, I hope that this is clear. Now we will proceed toward a third group of plants, that is conifers. Conifers grow into large trees. Okay, conifers are not small plants, they are trees. They often have tough, narrow leaves called needle. I will show you a picture in which you can see that how narrow and tough their leaves are. So their tough and narrow leaves are called needle. They reproduce using seeds, not spores. They reproduce using seeds. Seeds, for example, when you eat apple, you can see the seeds inside, right? So this is that is a seed, not spore. Okay. They don't have proper flowers. Okay. They do have flowers, but you can say them these are flower-like structure. Seeds are produced into cones. Okay, I will show you now that what are the cones. Okay. So we will revise this. Conifers are large trees. They have tough, narrow leaves called needle. They reproduce using seeds. They don't have proper flowers, and seeds are produced into cones. Sorry, seeds will be, okay, seeds will become cones. Seeds will become cones. Seeds are produced into cones. Now let me show you the diagram. Conifers here. Okay, see. Come on. Yes. Okay. Can you see the needle-like structure? These are the leaves. Can you see the leaves? These are so tough and so narrow, we call them needle. And here we have cone. Okay, here you can see I have labeled that there is a cone, and can you see the leaves? These are called needles. And this is a picture of a conifer tree. There you can see a lot of leaves which are called needles, and you can see the cones. You may have seen these cones in the areas which are cold, maybe hilly areas. You can see this, maybe you can see in Abha. I'm not sure about this, but maybe because Abha is also a hilly area and it's cold, so there is possibility that there can be conifer trees. Okay, so we will revise about the conifers. These are large trees. Their leaves are called needle. They reproduce using seeds. They don't have proper flowers, and their seeds are produced into cones. Here you can see I have labeled the cones. And the needles. And this is a picture showing a conifer tree. Not one, there are a lot of conifer trees. Okay. Now we will proceed toward our fourth group of plants, which is flowering plants. The name suggests that these plants reproduce using seeds that are produced inside flowers. Okay. These plants reproduce means produce new plants. How? By using seeds that are produced inside flowers. So there is a flower. Inside the flower there is a seed, and this seed will produce a new plant. Just this. This is all about flowering plant for you. That there is a flower. Inside a flower there is seed, and these seeds will grow, these seeds will produce new plants. See, this is a strawberry plant. Okay, here I have labeled, you can see the leaves, you can see the flowers, you can see the fruit. So flowering plants produce flowers and fruit. Okay, so I will revise the whole lecture again for you. Just a quick revision. Okay. Yes, organisms. Okay, no. Here, classification. Living things are classified into groups. Carl Linnaeus was a scientist, and he was the first person to classify living things, and he classified living things into species. But species is the last category of classification. When you go upwards, the bigger category is kingdom, and there are two kingdoms: plants, animals. So plants, we can classify the organisms which have green leaves and can photosynthesize into plants, and the organisms that move around and eat each other organisms, okay, are animals. And plants and animals are kingdoms. So there are millions of plants on this planet, and all the plants are classified into four groups: mosses, ferns, conifers, flowering plants. Mosses, these are very small plants, and these live in damp, shady places. They don't produce flowers, and they produce spores for reproduction, and they have very thin leaves that dry out easily. You can see in the picture that how small their leaves are. You can see that their leaves can dry out. If the sunlight come on these trees, their leaves will dry out. This is a picture showing the mosses, and this is the structure of a moss. It has a stem-like structure, it has a leaf-like structure, it has a stalk which holds the capsule, and capsule produce, inside the capsule there are spores, and these spores are used for reproduction. Then we have ferns. Ferns grow in shady places just like mosses. Ferns are bigger than mosses. Some of the ferns grow so big that they are called fern trees. Leaves of the fern are called fronds. They don't produce flowers just like mosses. They reproduce using spores just like mosses. But in mosses, the spores are produced inside a capsule, and in the case of ferns, the spores are present on the back of fronds. Here you can see in the picture that there are spores on the back of frond, and these spores will produce new plants. Next we have conifers. Conifers are large trees. They have tough narrow leaves which are called needle. They reproduce using seeds, not spores. Okay, they don't have proper flowers, they just have flower like structures, and seeds are produced into cones. Here you can see a picture which show you the needle and the cones, and this picture is showing you that a lot of conifer trees which have a lot of needles and a lot of cones. Flowering plants. These plants reproduce using seeds. These seeds are produced inside flowers. And in this picture, you can see a flowering plant. This is a strawberry plant. It has leaves, it has flowers, and it has fruits. So flowering plants do have flowers and fruit because the name suggests these are flowering plants. They produce flowers. So that is it for today, guys. I hope that this topic is clear, but if you still have any confusion, you can ask me whenever you want, and best of luck.